I'm eagerly waiting to know how you met Puja Gurudev.
Yeah, so as you had said, I'm from a very religious family. So my mother, as a youngster, when I was a young person, she would always take me to all these Puranic lectures, etc., which was very great. And suddenly one day, somebody told us that one Swami Chinmayananda was going to give lectures for 21 days at Shivaji Park. And so my mother and I went, had no idea as to what Bhagavad Gita was because we had not done that ever before.
Yeah.
Small booklet was given to each one of us with the shlokas written, and so that we could write our own points down, our points down. And we would come back from the lecture, and both of us would tell my father as to what all was taught in the during that lecture. And we both would sit and memorize. Of course, my mom could not get it by heart, and each day I would memorize each of the shlokas that were taught. And somebody was chanting at that time. I had this inner feeling, oh, if only I were allowed to chant.
Okay.
Little did I know that little thought was going to become such a big, repercussion it had, and what kind of
a thought which transformed your life.
My whole life.
That's right.
And how Gurudev just engulfed my entire being, and how he took me under his wings and groomed me to be what I am today. We were in Bhopal, and it so happened that few years later, Gurudev happened to come to heavy electricals. My husband was an engineer there. One day he comes home and he says, all these people are making such a big fuss about some Swami coming. I don't know why they have to not to work, and they just any pretense they don't want to work. So I casually asked, so which Swami is this? And he said, it is Swami Chinmayananda. And before he could complete, I was just jumping with joy, and I wanted to go. And he couldn't understand why a young lady like me would want to go to a lecture series like this. So he said, don't expect me to come. I will just drop you and then pick you up on the scooter. He came for the first day, and he didn't realize that there would be about 5,000 to 10,000 people. He didn't know where to come and pick me up. So he said, today I will stay, and we will decide as to where I can come and pick you up. From tomorrow, don't expect me to stay. I said, fine. So he sat in the audience, and he had no clue as to how a master is, a real master, when he walks, when he says the 7:30 is going to be the beginning of a lecture series, 7:28. You could hear his kada, the way he was walking with his wooden shoes. 7:30 on the dot. That Om from deep within. The whole Maidan was just, there was pin drop silence. Unbelievable with Indian crowd, everybody was, till that time there was so much of noise, everything just shut down. Everybody was mesmerized as though, and everybody was listening. And 1.5 hours, nobody could tell that the time had passed by. And at the end of it, my husband is thinking in his mind, he told me later, that this Swami is a magician who is mesmerizing everybody. And it seems as he is thinking that, Gurudev said those same words. And he said, some of you are thinking that I am mesmerizing and I am a magician, but, I know what you are thinking. Tomorrow morning, we are going to have a postgraduate course. I don't expect all of you to come. It's in a small hall. It will be 5:30 a.m. it will start. 5:30 a.m. means you have to be inside the hall by 5:15. And the doors will close after that. If you come even 1 minute late, you cannot enter. And it's not for everybody. I don't expect everyone. So as I came out, my husband said, does this Swami think that I won't understand? And to prick his ego, I said, yeah, he thinks that you won't understand. Then he said he wanted to prove. This is what Gurudev wanted. So he said, I will be there. And so both of us were there at 5 a.m. and rest is all history. In New York is that when he came to our apartment, we hardly had 4 children who were some Indian kids. I had invited them. They were all sitting along with Aruna. Vidya was not born. And then Gurudev told me, why don't you start a Balavihar? And I had no idea as to what a Balavihar meant. So I said, Swamiji, how do I do that? And so he told me, okay, I'll give you a letter to, when you go to India. He knew that I was from Bombay. When you go to India next time, take this letter to Nirmala Amma in Chembu and go and ask her as to how to start a Balavihar and what to do. So I had that letter with me. So in another 6 months I was coming to India. Then I came to Bombay, to Chembur, and then went to Nirmala Amma's class. And every week I went and then learnt from her. In those days I didn't even have a recorder, so I had to just learn some of the shlokas and some of the, all the tunes and everything,
Really?
to keep it in my mind and all that. So it was tough. So that's how I got all the notes and everything. Came back to New York, and with the help of Brahmachari Krishnamurti ji, who was our study group leader, we started our first Balavihar. Because I was going to start, in the meantime I had Vidya. So we waited for 4 months, and when she was 4 months old, we started our first Balavihar. And it went
It was
very...
the first Balavihar in the US.
In the US, it was the first Balavihar. As they started growing with Balavihar, they started knowing more than the parents. It was really very, you could see that there was a big gap. And when the children went back home and they said that, no, this is not what the reason is, this is the reason, then they started feeling a little bit kind of intimidated. Next time Gurudev came, I went and told him. He said, no, you in America, you have to have the parents' class also. You have to make the parents sit in the class so that you can teach them. They need the class as much as the children need. So I was very proud. Gurudev has asked me to take the parents' class also. So I thought I could take it in a fashion like a study group fashion.
Yeah.
So the next week I said all parents have to stay. Everybody stayed. We started with Kindle Life or something, whatever. Then first week there were 75 people or 80 people. Second
How
week,
did you manage?
Second week there were no. You should listen to fully. Second week there were 35, 40. Then it became 5, 10. Then 1. So I said, what am I doing wrong? So Gurudev came. I went running to him. I said, the children are so many, but parents are not coming. He said, that's because you are not trained to teach them. I said, how do I get trained? He said, you have to come with me to India. My jaws dropped. I said, for how long? As long as it takes to get trained. I didn't want to say anything. I came back to my room. This was during the camp. So I went back to my room and I told my husband that Swamiji is saying that I should come to India with him. He says, so? So I said, so? So I said, how can I go? He said, why not? I said, what will happen to the kids? He said, I can take care of. He doesn't even know which grade they are in. That great a person. And what is he going to do with these 2 kids?
This is too much the way you're saying.
He said, if Swamiji says that you have to go to India, you go to India. So I was not I didn't know what to do. I ran to Apparao and I told Apparao, Swamiji is saying that I should go to India with him. He said, how lucky you are. I have been asking him. He never even says yes to me. How come he says yes to you? If I were you, I would just drop everything and run. I said, okay, then I should go. So I came back. And I had 1 month's time because I thought I would start with something nice.
But you were also working in US, right?
I was working. I was a full-time research assistant in the biophysics research. So I just research division. I went to my professor, Dr. Axelrod. The reason I'm saying about this is because later on, Gurudev blessed him also. That's why I just wanted people to know that. So Dr. Axelrod, and I told him that I'm going for getting trained. I want leave of absence. I don't know for how long. He said, that's fine, He didn't even question me.
Yeah.
But one thing I did was, we bought a huge big freezer and I started cooking from day 1. So every day, whole day, whenever there is time, dishes after dishes after dishes, and then bought all these freezer bags and these marking pens and started writing dates and what's the contents and all, and then a big Santa Claus's checklist and everything.
And a chart of when we were supposed to eat which food, and what dates we had to eat which
I put everything, and then I started off, and then I went to India, and then I went to see him, and Gurudev looked at me. The whole way was very difficult for me because I had no clue where I was going.
Yeah.
Somehow the rickshaw fell, and then I also was all muddy. So many different things happened. And
Where was this? Which place was this?
Gaya, I think. Somewhere.
Oh my God.
Then I went to see Gurudev, and he comes out of the big tent, and then he sees me. Everybody is standing. This is the way he greets you. Swamiji, I have come. Looks at me. You have come? Leaving your poor husband and poor children. What are they going to do now? And all these people are looking at me like I'm a runaway person. What an insult, huh? So I just didn't know how to answer it. I said, Swamiji, you wanted me to come. So you left them. I said, I had to have a comeback. So I just, mustered all my courage, and I said, but Swamiji, don't worry. I have cooked for 1 year. So I have put all the food in the freezer for them.
1 year?
That's it. Every little chance he got. In every lecture. There was absolutely no need to bring this episode, but he would bring it up.
Now tell me some of your wonderful Bal Vihar memories with, Amma and with Gurudev.
Yeah, I mean, it was really neat to grow up in Bal Vihar because Gurudev had this vision that children needed to have this cultural upbringing in the U.S. Children, those of us who had grown up in Bal Vihar, we really were not confused about our identity. There's this whole saying, ABCD, American born, confused, desi.
Yeah.
But those of us who grew up in Bal Vihar, we were not confused. People would ask us many questions. Why do you wear a bindi? I wear a bindi always. I've always worn bindi every day. But it was never confusing to me. I would tell them about how it represents Mount Meru and how Goddess Parvati is the goddess of power and all women should have internal power and that's why we have to wear this. And then all my American friends used to want to wear bindi also.
Wow.
And then similarly, when Swamini Amma or somebody had written that Why Do We Book, I mean, all these different things that came out through Chinmaya Mission, they really helped us understand all of the symbolism. And, Amma always made sure that whenever we did puja, we did a lot of pujas at home, Amma always made sure we knew what every ritual meant. So we never just did puja without understanding, because all my friends who were not in Bal Vihar would say, my parents take me to the temple and some Sanskrit shlokas are chanted and I don't understand anything. And I always used to think, why don't they explain it to you? Why don't you understand? Then why don't you come to Bal Vihar if you don't understand? Because, I always understood what the 16 steps of the puja were and why we did each thing. And I always thought, it's so beautiful how our Hindu culture is so deep and has so much meaning.
Yeah, right.
And
True.
so because of that, it gave us so much appreciation. And so even in school, we would always go and talk. And back then, even as today, there were many mistakes in textbooks where there were many misconceptions of Hinduism. But my sister and I and other Bal Vihar children, we would always be the ones to correct those mistakes and talk about it and be very clear about what was the real meaning behind things. And so, when people would call us part of the red dot family, because we wore bhaktas, bindis, we would explain what it actually is. They would ask us things like, do you worship cows? And then we would explain, how we see divinity in all beings. And all of this was Gurudev's vision for all of us as children growing up in the West. And so it became then more and more clear to us as we got older that, the difference between Bal Vihar children and those who didn't go to Bal Vihar. And so that was part of why Bal Vihar grew and was so successful, because eventually other parents understood that, oh yeah, these Bal Vihar children seem to be very confident and they aren't scared. You know, there used to be this thing where people would be ashamed to be Indian in America. And so all those kids who didn't know about it, they would try to take on an American name or try to act as American as possible back then. And then, you know, this shift started happening where more and more people started understanding the value then of Bal Vihar and Hindu culture. And so then that's how Gurudev's Bal Vihars became so popular, and so all around the country they started growing. And then people then understood that, oh, it is nice to be Indian. You can be proud to be Hindu. You can fit in. You can be both. You can fit in with American culture and still be a very strong Hindu and strong Indian, and not have to feel like you can only be one or the other.
So did Gurudev tell you stories?
Yes. So like I said, you know, during the camps and during the summers, whenever Gurudev would come, he would always make time for the children. So, you know, in the evenings or in the afternoons, a lot of times in the afternoons, the parents would all be resting. But Gurudev somehow was always around. So we would all be sometimes playing volleyball, and then he'd come and gather all of us, and then we'd all sit around him under a tree, and then he'd start telling us stories. He would want to hear our questions, or he would just be like listening to us, and I just remember laughing a lot whenever Gurudev was around. And then, you know, when I was really small, we would all sit on his lap. And he would let all of us sit on his lap. He would never get mad or feel like there were too many children. I mean, I'm sure, poor thing, it must have been so hard for him with all of us all over him. But he never minded. He always let all of us be all over him.
So all of us would jump on his shoulders, sit on his lap.
Yeah.
And he allowed that.
He allowed it. He was happy. He was always smiling and always happy. And then when we got older, when we were teenagers, I remember, you know, then back then there wasn't Chick. There was nothing like Chick. But it was like Yuva Kendra. So we had Bal Vihar, and then we had older Bal Vihar classes and Yuva Kendra kind of classes. And then Gurudev would always have, you know, all of us had to go to the evening lectures. So the last lecture or last two lectures would be question and answer sessions for the adults. But he always had a separate question and answer session for the youth. So I remember going to those question and answer sessions, and I remember you had to put your name and address on those questions and answers. True. And even the children had to. And so, you know, we used to ask some questions, but then we would always feel so silly, like, you know, is our question too silly? But he never made you feel like your question was
He would
silly.
answer every small question.
Every single question he would answer.
But continue my journey. I came back after my, you know, going around with Gurudev. I used to take down notes after notes after notes wherever I went. He had covered almost all the texts everywhere, morning, evening lecture, he would let me come for all the meetings also, so that I knew what was happening. It was an amazing time for me.
Intensive training by Gurudev.
In my life, if at all I want to choose, if I want to have that experience, that was that intense experience of 6 months, being with him day in and day out. I used to stay in the same place that he stayed at, and I used to eat in the same table as he used to eat. So it was just an amazing experience for me. And after Andamans, I was going to come back. So in the flight, I had a very hard time telling him that I was going to go back to America. So I went and did namaskaram to him, and I said, Swamiji, I want to go back to America after this. So he said, okay, now if you go back, you won't complain that the adults are not coming to your class. He said, your basement won't be enough for you. And then you will go to a bigger place, that won't be enough for you. You will go to a bigger place, it won't be enough for you. So that was like, actually, what a blessing. I just can't tell you. Now we are expanding our Avantika, which is a huge, one of the biggest ashrams in US, and still
that's not sufficient.
It's not enough. At that time only, he blessed me and he said, so Swamini Sharadananda. And I was just shocked, and I looked at him. He said, I'm not talking about Swamini Sharada Priyananda. I'm talking about Sharadananda. He was just teasing me. Very funny. That college that the camp was happening at had two different faucets. One was cold water, one was hot water faucet. So So if you went to wash your hands, you cannot mix them. So you have to have a jug that you mix them and keep. So I would, after he finishes his yogurt, the last portion of his food, I would run to the bathroom and mix the water and keep it ready for him to come and wash his hands. So that day, I just poured it in his hand. Immediately he looked at like this. He would always make a big show.
I know.
And he said, nicely frozen. I felt very bad that it must have been too cold. So next meal, I was very alert. Quickly finished giving him food, and before he could get up, I ran to the bathroom and mixed the water properly, made sure that the water was proper temperature, and he entered. Innocent looking, that's all. Only innocent looking, because he knew what was happening. So he knew I was nervous. So he puts his hands like this. I poured the water touches his hand. He immediately jumps back like this. I really panicked, means you won't even believe how I panicked, that it must be boiling hot. I thought if I burnt my Guru, let me also burn. So I just poured the rest of the water on myself. And it was perfectly right temperature. And this Swami looks at me and he said, gotcha! Can you believe it? A Swami, that great Guru, doing that to me. I was so angry. Instead of laughing, I'm telling him, Swamiji, you are such a great actor. If you had gone for acting, you would have gotten an Oscar. And he just looks at me. He says, who said I'm not one? And walked out. So he's an actor. Everything was a play for him. So it was just an amazing, heart-touching moment for me. We were just playing with us, and we were all like, he was teaching us how life should not be taken so seriously.
So when was it last that you met Gurudev?
That is before of course, I met him last one. So he had called me only to give blessings. I was not going to go to Washington, but I went because he called me to come. What a great blessing, So I chanted for him. I cooked for him. I stayed in that same, Jyoti and myself, we both stayed in that same, Jyoti Barucha and myself, we stayed in that same cottage. And so we had this monitor, to hear his heart. Whole night we would hear his heart, to know that he is okay.
Yeah, Amma, after Guruji, you have to tell me something about, after Gurudev, you have to tell me something about Guruji.
So, yes, so I have to talk about Guruji. Because it was such a sudden change, we had no idea.
True.
But it was like perfect, passing the baton to the next, the Guru Parampara. I just don't know how Guruji just came, and it was like the river flowing. There was no rubbing or anything.
Like a person like Gurudev, walking on this planet itself is something amazing. Gurudev, that love, Amma, it's never like,
That's what it is like. Even today it's so fresh for all of us, because he has filled our heart with his love. He has given us so much. Otherwise we wouldn't have had Guruji in our life.
True.
So something to have like that in your life is
Now like imagine like Gurudev and Guruji. Now Swarupanandaji.
Hope and pray that God keeps us in the same path, in the same mind.
Very true.
Same Guru Bhakti.
Amma, it's such a wonderful thing, for us to relive the moments that we had with the Puja Gurudev. So to conclude, one wonderful message about Gurudev and one beautiful song that you sang for him and where he asked you to sing that many a times. We will conclude with that. Will I allow you without singing?
I've sung for him many a times.
Okay.
And it's very, very touching and very nice.
You want to join with you?
Jaya Gurudevam Chinmayanandam Jaya Gurudevam चिन्मयानन्दं प्रणमाम्यहं गुरुदेवम् अहर्निशं प्रणमाम्यहं गुरुदेवम् अहर्निशं धर्मोद्धारकं गीताप्रचारकं धर्मोद्धारकं गीताप्रचारकम् आनन्दरूपम् आत्मस्वरूपम् आनन्दरूपम् आत्मस्वरूपम् जय गुरुदेवं चिन्मयानन्दं जय गुरुदेवं चिन्मयानन्दं प्रणमाम्यहं गुरुदेवम् अहर्निशं तामसहारकं गीताप्रचारकं तामसहारकम् उत्साहवर्धकं तपोवनशिष्यं तत्त्वस्वरूपं तपोवनशिष्यं तत्त्वस्वरूपं जय गुरुदेवं चिन्मयानन्दं जय गुरुदेवं चिन्मयानन्दं प्रणमाम्यहं गुरुदेवम् अहर्निशं प्रेमहृदयिनं परमविरागिणं प्रेमहृदयिनं परमविरागिणं सन्न्यासिनं गुरुं शिरसा नमाम्यहं सन्न्यासिनं गुरुं शिरसा नमाम्यहं जय गुरुदेवं चिन्मयानन्दं प्रणमाम्यहं गुरुदेवम् अहर्निशं जय गुरुदेवम्